Patterson plantation. And hopefully somewhere in the future you will try to find out why did Africans who were enslaved take certain names that were basically the names of individuals who might have been on a ship, or it could have been someone they were sold to. And in some cases, some slaves were sold 3-4 different times. However, it was at the Patterson farm where Modesty Green had a child named Harriet Green. And Harriet Green had a child on the Thompson plantation named Araminta, and they called her Minty. And her last name was Ross because her mother married Ben Ross. There's a book called Bound for the Promised Land, Harriet Tubman, and it's all about the Ross family and how they interacted with the families here in Dorchester County, which would be the Brodus, it would be the Thompsons, the Stewarts, the Keens, and also one other family. I don't know if I said Brodus or not. But as we're driving along this road, we're now come upon what is called the Brodus Farm. And it's this farm which today, if she came back, very little has changed except for a nice paved road. But it's still dedicated to farming as she would have known back at that time. Sometimes people try to say, oh, cotton and tobacco. Cotton and tobacco takes many, many hands to harvest the crop. And because there are so many people were needed to harvest cotton and tobacco and to care for tobacco at least, that the farmers in this area then went to grain crops. So people like the Thompsons, the Brodus, and the Pattersons, the Stewarts, and the Keens, who were large landowners, who had large numbers of slaves, they more than likely would have invested in what they call a cash crop. And the cash crop would have been a grain crop, such as oats, wheat, corn. And basically speaking, this is how they made their money. Now the Brodus were not strong economic farmers. And this is the Brodus farm. And we can slow down.
You want to pull in up here?
We can pull in, get you get it. This is the Brodus farm. It is privately owned, which means that we don't have access to the entire area. However, we have this little turn off here where we can go in. And if you'd like to take some pictures, this is where she grew up. When I say she grew up, this is where she worked. She worked here, but 90% of the time she was hired out to other people. She was not with her parents or with her mother every day when her mother returned from the Thompson plantation to this site. So the house that you see, and many people come here and they say, oh, we're going to see our house, we're going to see our house. That is not her house. Slaves would not have lived this close to the road. They would live further back in the woods, and they would live along the water edge, so to speak. But this is the property where she would have grown up. One night, when she was working on the other side of the road for another family, she snuck off and came back to this farm, found her mother, and was crying. And she was around 8 at that particular time. And her mother had to pick her up and take her back before sunrise for fear that she may be punished for leaving the people that she was rented out to. And so little Harriet, at a very young age, learned, like most children, even though their parents may have had control of them, there was someone above the parents who had ultimate control. When the sisters were sold, it was not the decision of mom and dad. It was the decision of the person who owned mom and owned dad. And so therefore, children could be sold or rented out for 2-3 years, or they could go and sell them. We even have an example of a woman who freed her slave, but the slave was working in South Carolina. But she said, upon my death, I want my slave who is working in South Carolina to be freed upon my death. And we looked at it and we tried to reread it again. And then we found other examples where she had rented out different slaves in different places in Maryland. And upon her death, she wanted all her slaves to be free. And so slaves were rented not only just in Dorchester County, but as far south as South Carolina and etc. One of the most interesting things is that when people were running away, in most cases, those who ran away from this area, they went north. But if you lived in the South, like South Carolina and Georgia, you would run away by going to Florida or going to the Caribbean. And what was so ironic is that people who were running away in Virginia and etc., they would come to Dorchester County or to the Eastern Shore, and they would stay here because they felt safe. And they felt safe because when Harriet ran away, 90% of the people who were black who lived in Cambridge, they were free. And so you could mingle with the population and no one gave you any particular concern. And even in the rural area, when she decided to run away, there were 21 free black communities. And those 21 free black communities had their own style for living. And so there was a large concentration of free blacks in Dorchester County as they were enslaved. And at each time we do the census, we find that there are more free blacks. And eventually by 1860, over half of the blacks who were living in Dorchester County were free. And that was because people were running away, which includes the Ross family. And so we're going to be going down to the Bucktown store. Did anyone, is everyone with me? Okay.
They want to get off the bus and take a
I guess
photo.
not. I didn't hear it.
No, we can get off.
Oh,
and
did
take
anyone want to get off?
Yes, yes.
Yes,
Let's get
please.
off.
I'm sorry.